Hey everyone, and welcome to my first attempt at a Photoshop tutorial. What we're going to be doing here is changing my desktop background of a Nissan Skyline GTR R34 from this light blue to something else. Maybe red, maybe green, maybe a different blue, purple, pink, whatever color you want. That's going to be the purpose of this lesson. Now, if you want this image so you can work along, I'll put a link probably up here where you can go find the image. This is a screenshot or a in-game render from The Crew, Ubisoft's upcoming game, and this is a in-game 3D render. This isn't real life. As amazing as it looks, this whole everything is just crazy. So this is what we're going to be working with. If you missed that link, I'll put something down in the description. Without further ado, let's get started. Open up your Photoshop. I'm working with Photoshop CS6, I believe. Yes. We're going to start by going File, New, and opening up a new project. Name it whatever you want. I'll call this one Skyline Background BG. And then enter in your desktop preferences, what your size is. Mine's 1360 by 768. So that's what we're going to do. So now, the next step we're going to do is to go and find the image that we're using. Mine was in my Photoshop folder. Just click and drag out to the window. You'll see this plus symbol. Bam, there it is. Now, because I believe the image is 1920 by 1080, it doesn't quite fit exactly in my desktop specifications. So if you want to click and drag, if you hold shift, it'll be equal on both axes. Otherwise, you can start stretching the image out of proportion. So if you hold shift, you'll drag it on those axes, and just, for me at least, I'm gonna have to drag it out here, the window, just to overlap it a bit, so it's even. Looks good. Next step that you should take is duplicating the layer. Well, let's call it copy, and I'm going to rasterize this layer and hide the old one. We do this because now with the original, if I did have a brush tool out, say if I was working on this and I'm painting black for some reason, if I accidentally selected the other layer, it won't let me brush on that layer because it's hidden. So it just helps you from editing it. If it was open, it's going to tell you to rasterize it, which you don't want to do. We want to keep it the raw image. So we'll just hide it and undo what we did. Quick solution for undoing. Just some tips here before we start jumping in. Control Z is how you undo, so I type that. Control Z. To give you a view, this is everything that we've done. So this Control Z toggles between the last thing you've done. Control Alt Z goes back through the history. So we did a new, a place, a duplicate, rasterize, and layer. If you press Control Z, it'll go back to the beginning. So we want to undo the rasterize. That's a quick view of how that's done. The next step is we're going to have to select the body. So if you hold space, you can mouse around. It'll give you the hand. You just click and drag the mouse around while holding space. We're going to want to select the body here. So what we're going to do, if you want to work in a, because this is the one layer we're going to be working on, if you press F7, it's just going to hide the toolbars here so you have a bigger space to work in. Makes it look a lot more professional. And because we don't need this timeline if you have it on, again, just minimize that as well, and you have a much larger space to work with. So the next step we're going to be taking is taking out the wand tool, which is default hotkey to W, and we're going to select the quick selection tool. The magic wand tool could work, but as you can see, it kind of has a mind of its own for what it starts selecting, and you could start messing around with the tolerance and trying to change it. It'll get pretty accurate, but because there's so many, like, say if I want to select sorry, turn the tolerance down to show you an example. It's selecting a lot of the blue in the body, but these white light highlights, it treats it weird because it's doing its job. It's finding blue, and then when it finds this harsh white, it realizes that it's a difference and does not select it. So now if I wanted to paint, it would go over the blue, but it does not select the white. As you can see, that is the premise of what we're doing here, is selecting just the body. Now, if you have a mask like this and you want to deselect it, Control D is the easiest way to deselect it. We're not going to be using a wand, we're going to be using the quick selection tool. Now what this is going to let us do is start piecing together. You're just going to use it as a brush tool by clicking and dragging, or clicking in certain spots, and it'll do its own work around the body. I find it works pretty easy if you can use the biggest brush possible without overlapping, and just start clicking areas. It'll smartly join itself to it. So just go along the body and start selecting all the blue you can see. So just the mirror, the spoiler, the body, this lower body kit. And you're gonna notice that it's not gonna get everything. It's not perfect on finding the edges. For the most part, it does a really good job. But if you notice right here, if I start getting down to pixels, there is still blue outside of it. Now, I'm not gonna show you the step-by-step process of how you're gonna get rid of this. There's a couple ways. One of them is to go to refine edge. And sorry, if we change this on black on white, this is a mask and this is what it's selecting. If we shift the edge out, we can start selecting more or widen the radius. We're not going to do that here. It's a bit more advanced. You can just go back and start tracing it out. This is kind of sucky, but it is a lot better than having to do this all by hand, selecting everything and painting it. And this is going to be a one-step process right now, more or less, instead of having to do it over and over again in the future. Now, on the blue, you're going to want to have the plus symbol for when you're selecting it, and you will want to go over more than under, and you'll see that why, because you want to make sure you have all the blue. So right there I just accidentally selected too much. If you hold Alt, that'll go to the minus symbol, and that is to deselect certain areas. So if you're clicking, it'll deselect whatever you don't want, and you can just go back in with the plus brush and reselect it. If it starts taking too much of an area and you don't know why it's acting weird, just resize your brush. It could just be that it's selecting more than what you're seeing. And it's the same for everything else. Just make sure you have all the blue selected. Otherwise you will have to go back, because you will notice it when we recolor the car, because the original parts will be blue. Now just go, again, just go back and resize all your headlights. It's pretty simple stuff. You want to mask out the headlights, the fog lights, all the lights. And I'm not going to bore you with this. I'm going to go through and do the best mask I possibly can. This process will take a while, and you don't really need my guidance too much. So just go ahead and just remember plus symbol on the stuff you do want to select, minus on the stuff you don't. So minus this grill, minus this grill, but plus on the bodywork. And even though you can't quite see it, there is blue and grill and stuff there. The grill is kind of on this line. You can start seeing the blue there. Zoom in if you need it. You will, again, want to make sure you have as much of the body as possible selected. And again, go over instead of under. Can't stress that enough on this build. So just keep working on that. I'm going to fast forward so you can see the kind of process I took, and I will rejoin you here in a second. To you guys. To me, it's going to be a bit longer. Well, here we are. We now have a decent part of the body done. You can now press M to select your marquee tool. Oh no, you just lost your mask because you accidentally clicked on the screen. Don't worry, Control Z will help. It'll bring back. Don't mess around though, because you can actually lose it, and don't deselect because it will be gone. You can hopefully undo it, but don't mess around. What you're going to want to do is right click on the selected area. For us it's the body. If you right click on the grill, still do the same thing, but just right click on the body to be safe, and go layer via copy. Excuse my speaking. Now, it may not look like anything has been done, but if you look here on your layer list, we now have a new layer. What this new layer is the body that we have selected. All the blue that we want to change. Why did we do that? Because now we're going to duplicate this, call the new one green, and now we have an extra body layer, because if we say chose green, because we're on this layer, this is the top layer of the image. If I wanted to black out the windshield, this isn't how I would do it, but if I wanted to, this is actually still going to be on top of everything. Now, if I control click the thumbnail, it'll select everything in this image. So now if I blacked out, say if I don't know, if I was just painting and I went outside the edges, it doesn't let me. It only paints now in the area we have selected. It does not go outside of the boundaries, so no other part of the image will get messed up. That's not how we're going to paint it, don't worry. So now nothing gets messed up. We have an extra layer that we can now mess around with. And that is what we're going to be using as our one stop. So now we put in the work to make a good mask, to have this body part selected, so now we can change this without having to reselect everything again to do it. Alright, so now we have our body selected. The next step we are going to take is to color it. This can be done in a multitude of ways, and I'm going to show you the first method right now. One of the first methods we can take that I have found in my travels and in my experience to be the easiest is, now with this layer selected, we're going to go to adjustments. If you don't have that, just go Windows Adjustments and drag it to a toolbar wherever you see fit. And we're going to go hue and saturation. There's quite a few other ones that you can look around and see, but hue and saturation is what we need. Now, if we start doing it this way, you're going to see that it's changing everything, but you're also saying that, oh my god, it's changing the body of the car. Well, if you click this button down here, it means it only affects the layer below. So now it is only affecting the layer that we have called green. So if we slide this over to a green and click colorize, slide it back to a green, we're now in the green spectrum of things. And if we saturate it more, we get another green. Say we want a different blue. Ooh, that's a nice blue. Let's go here and saturate it a bit more. See, that's a nice blue. I like that. So if we have that body to the original, I like this blue a lot more. This is a lot more of the Skyline Fast and Furious kind of blue. It's beautiful. So if we want to change this back to a gray, we have that option too. You can even lighten it. And you gotta be a bit careful that you're not just crushing everything so that it's just a solid white. You don't want to go just a solid black. But you can get a pretty happy medium on your black, and we can go back in later and start changing the rest of the details in it. But for the sake of what I want to do, we call the layer green, so we are going to make a green Nissan Skyline. And it's just as simple as that. So now if we want to add another layer, say if we want to add a color balance, again we're taking the color out of the whole image. If we want to make it more red or intense, but if we affect only the layer below, it'll only affect the car layer again, and we can fine tune. So also you want to punch up the greens. Do I want more of a yellow, or do I want more of a yellow kind of green, or more of a blue kind of green? I want more of a yellow. And again, preserve luminosity will preserve the luminosity. If it's brighter, it'll keep it brighter. If it's darker, it'll keep it darker. And we can actually change how the highlights behave as well, and the lowlights and the shadows. If we want it to be more green in the shadows, more blue. If we go to our highlights, we want it to be more magenta. Now we want it to be more green. Don't want to go too crazy. Bring it down. Bring this down. And it's really just that simple. With it, without it, punches up the green a bit more, brings it to another level. Another step we can do now is to add a contrast curves layer. You're going to want to go to adjustments and curves. What this fine tool does is gives you the ability to add contrast to your project. Simple as that. You just want to choose points on here and drag them around. You can click the little eye to see what it was before. So as you can see, we definitely punched up the colors, crushed the grays, and made it a more of a light and dark situation without the gray area. No pun intended, that is what this does. Now, as you can see, we have this layer selected. Method 2 for this, and because you may notice we have this blue halo still on the car from the original color, we're going to want to change that, obviously. And this is where the second method would come in handy. So say if we just turn off all these layers again, turn off all our adjustments, and just work on the green layer, the tool we're going to be using, you would press B and go to your color replacement tool and change the color to a green. And I like that green. Size up our brush a bit, and we are just going to paint over the surface to this new green color that we want. You can size up the brush and do a super broad stroke, but it may slow down your computer a bit, so this is good enough. Again, we have the body selected and isolated, so it's not going to paint over any other surfaces. Making a good mask is important because this isn't selected in the layer. That's the original layers underneath it. So you would have to go back to the background layer and very carefully brush over this. Now, it's not perfect, which bothers me. Gently does it. Let's say that looks good. So now you have your green Nissan Skyline, and again you can see some other spots where it was changed. You would have to paint over as well. And where it comes in handy here to duplicate everything is because this, that does now exist. There is green in these spots now because it is the layer underneath the green. But we still have our original fully blue, as you can see. So that's why it pays to duplicate, because if you make these errors way back, like there's no way we could undo and go back to that mask from where we are now. It's probably way too many steps back, and we're just erasing a lot of work that we already did. So by creating a duplicate, we have a copy away from our original, so we can fix the copy that we have while still preserving the original. It's hugely beneficial to do this. It covers your ass, and you will definitely thank me later, or thank me now because of that if it's ever happened to you, because it is extremely frustrating. So what we're going to do now with the color replacement brush that we were using is get rid of this halo. Now we don't want to just use color, because it is going to literally color everything in the background, which, as you can tell, I don't know, that may look cool and artsy to you, but it's not exactly what I'm going for. So we're going to change this to hue, because we only want to replace the hue. We don't actually want to colorize the background. And with our green selected, we're just going to go around the body where we see all this green, or blue, excuse me, and change it over. I mean, in this window there's some blue. Around the tire you'll see some blue, so don't go too crazy, but just change where you kind of see it. It takes a keen eye. As you can see, there still is some blue haze up here. Still some blue there. That's subtle. I mean, there's going to be some in the headlights, so Let's give the headlights a green over. And that area on the tire, kind of under there. You will want to do a bit of a fuller look to it, otherwise it'll be very presentable if you just do one little spot. It'll be very obvious. And again, just kind of go over. If it starts looking a bit too crazy like there it did, just go back behind it and change the hue. So that looks good to me. It's subtle. You really couldn't tell if it was there, but it is. Other little things you can do, I mean, the contrast and stuff is just to sharpen the image, but say if you wanted to add some other embellishments and stuff, if we go to a basic brush tool, you're going to want to size it up, and what we're going to do is create a vignette. You're going to want to select black. If you press D, it'll go to your default colors, and you can press X to switch between the two. So we're going to go black, go up here, and oops, I had the wrong brush. You're going to want to go complete softness, and just go around the edges here. Subtle. Subtlety is the key with a good vignette. And just kind of darken the edges. It's called a vignette, and it naturally draws the focus of the person towards what you're trying to look at, because this is where the car is. We can kind of darken this edge a bit more to pull the eye away from it towards the bright source. If you have lights that you're killing, press E, go to your eraser tool. Use a round brush instead of a block, and just go in and again change your hardness if it's set to 100 so it's soft, and just kind of reveal that light again. And so if you toggle that out, again without the curves and everything, so there's our basic image. Well, there's a completely basic image. So with the curves and contrast, you know, it definitely sharpens it. And if you add the vignette, it just focuses the eye in more. It makes it more professional looking. And you can add other little embellishments and stuff that you want, and Instagram the hell out of it, whatever you're gonna do. But this is the basis for a good Photoshop picture and what you're gonna want to do. I myself, I'm gonna change this around, and I don't really like blue on it. My dream car is I don't really like the green on it. My dream car is a blue Nissan Skyline, so I'll go back in and change this around to be blue, and it's just as simple as that. We've gone from a blue Skyline to a new green one, and we can change any color we want at any time. Hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. I'm Matt from Kamikaze Production and Design. Cheers, and as usual, form your